Hey everybody, Mark's Home Hobbies here. This is Mark. A little bit more testing on the WLtoys K989 modified. As promised in the last video, I did switch out the front tires for some little bit wider ones. And I can show you what those look like. Those are 3D printed, but you can see the radius on the tire there pretty close. It's got a nice round radius, so those should work pretty good. A little bit different than the back tires. You can see it's got the stock WLtoys racing rims with the flat tires on the back. So let's put that puppy on the track and see how she runs. So without further ado, let's get the radio on. Gonna put the car down on the track. That's suggested. Okay, let's see how she runs. Wow. Not a whole heck of a lot of difference from yesterday. Yeah. Now I have to say the steering is a little bit better, just a wee bit. Still pretty slidey. That tells me that the back end needs to be a little bit looser. When it's too tight, you see it has the ability to spin out. And another thing too, maybe if it went with, if you look at the car, just a slight observation here. The track of the rear wheels and the front wheels is noticeably wider on the front than it is on the back. So that is going to give some oversteer, but in this case, this car has severe understeer, so that may cancel some of that out. Maybe if I put some wider rear wheels on here, that would compensate for the front being wider and would adjust the track even more. Let's try that. I'll be right back. Alright, tires changed, car's calibrated. I'll let you see the tires in a minute after I take a lap or two. That's a little different. So what do you guys think about that drifting? Think it looks any better than before? It feels slightly different. The rear end feels a little looser now with those 3D printed tires on there, but they are wider. So that compensates for a lot. But I think the steering and everything is right in the ballpark now. This is my rants about the whole situation though, but I think if you want to make the WLtoys K9X series, which includes all the other numbers in between, because they're all basically the same car with just wheels, slightly different suspension on a couple. But if you want to make those cars into a decent drift car for the cheapest amount of money, I think your best bet is to buy the cheap gyro the RBRC gyro for $10 or $12, I think it is, on Amazon. I don't have a link to it because I bought it so long ago, it's probably changed, but I'm sure you can find it. It's the drift gyro for the WPL D12 truck, or whatever that really cheap four-wheel drive crawler truck is that people are making them into drift trucks. It's the same gyro is used on that. They're all over the internet. You can find it in GY300, GYC300. GYC400 will work just as well, a little bit more expensive, a little bit more adjustments, but same thing. And if you couple that in there with a few little mods, real cheap mods for the steering, and get yourself some different tires on there and things like that, and maybe go to the one-way diff. If you're really serious about drifting it, you would want the one-way diff. And as a bonus, the one-way diff actually makes the car into a decent touring car too, because you get that little bit of rear end wash when you use those the lock differential in the back. So you really don't want that. So I have my rear differential in there so that it's the stock differential, and it just rolls, you know, as a normal car would. It's a limited slip, you know. One wheel gets traction, the other one doesn't. So it's not fully a drift car per se, because drift cars usually have a locked rear axle, or what they like to call in the business a posi rear end, posi traction, which means both wheels spin at the same rate, which causes the car to fishtail a little bit around the turns. Very old practice, much older than I am even. So anyhow, coupling that with the camber and the caster of the front end is what makes the car drift predictably, along with the weight, the proper precise balance of the car, and a little bit of suspension. All those elements have to be just right in order so that that car can drift into the turns predictably, come out of the turns predictably, enter the next turn. When you have full control, there's proportionality over the radio, the throttle, the steering, all that. That has to be able to be set. And unfortunately, on these cheaper cars, you just don't have all that tuning ability. So my theory is to go for the cheapest method that gets you to as close to the destination point as you possibly can, which I think for a $10 or $12 investment, and maybe some different wheels and tires on there, whatever those go for, $5, $6, $7. I think you would have a decent drift car without doing anything else to the car. I mean, minus the steering mod and trimming away a little bit off the rims and things like that you can do. Aside from doing all that, the cheapest mod is going to be that gyro. Okay, and that's going to make the biggest difference in the controllability of the car, because aside from that, there's not much else you can do to the car. You cannot adjust the toe of the steering without changing parts. You can't adjust the caster of it too easily without trimming parts or without modifying the car. You can't adjust the ride height. You know, you really don't have much adjustability as the car is stock the way it is. But it is a decent running car right out of the box. So if you just augment the things that need to be fixed on the car more so than trying to reinvent the whole car, I think you'd be a lot cheaper off in the end, and you won't end up buying a bunch of useless equipment that's really not going to solve your problem anyway. So I don't know, hope that answers a few questions out there in terms of gyros and things that are going on, and you know, with RC drift cars of this size anyways. Another problem with this size car is the fact that you only have a limited amount of room to work with. So space is a big concern, and weight is also a factor too. So you don't want to cram too much gear under there, or it becomes counterproductive. Your car is just a brick going down the track, and that's just not what you really want. I mean, if that's what gets you to the end point, okay, I accept, but you don't want to turn your car into a brick. Basically, you still want to be able to drive it fast. So my testing of this track out here is going to let me set the car for the maximum speed rate while still maintaining a driftable pattern. After I get that rate dialed in, I consider this rate the first phase of drifting. You have to get the car so that it's controllable at a high speed during a drift. Okay, and then after you do that, it will be controllable more to a degree at a lower speed. and much more predictable. So if you follow those steps in that order, I think you're going to find that it changes your opinion about the whole thing, because low speed drifting is basically for two-wheel drive, for rear-wheel drive stuff. As far as I can see. I mean, not saying that a rear-wheel drive car can't go fast, but generally you don't need speed with a rear-wheel drive car in order to get the back end to come around. With a four-wheel drive, it's a little different because you have four wheels drifting at the same time. So you have to have a balance of four-wheel traction, and you have to have a balance of the correct steering angle, and you have to have a balance of power distribution to all four wheels. So there's a lot more involved with the four-wheel drive drift car than there is a two-wheel drive drift car. So bear that in mind when you're going through all these changes and you're knocking your head up against the wall going, why can't I get this car to drift and not spin out? Trust me, I've been there and I've done that, and I've thrown the money at it to a certain degree. And that right over there, this car right here doing this, so you can see, pretty nice compilation of drift laps there, albeit large circles. But you have to start somewhere. You have to get control of the car, and you have to get the muscle memory in your hands and your whole body used to this car. So if you watched this long and you made it through, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And hope you saw something that you liked. And I'll be doing some stuff with the bodies on, and then I'll have a little bit of background done, and the track will be more complete, and everything will be back to kind of normal again, and then we'll really see what they got. I guess, I don't know. We'll try anyhow. So this is Mark's Home Hobby saying see you in the next one.